Hello, Cameron coming to you from the wonderful city of Geelong in Victoria, Australia. What I was wanting to do for you in this video and some subsequent videos is just a video about some of the Australian movie titles I own on DVD. And so there'll be spoilers, so if I hold up a cover of one you haven't seen and you want to, just skip over that bit or stop the video. I'll give a brief description of the films. I won't include films that are set overseas but filmed in Australia. So in other words, a film like Knowing that has mocked up scenes over here to look like it's in the States, I won't do. And I've got a few titles that I haven't actually got round to watching yet. I've got them on DVD. I've bought them at the reject shop or the $2 shop, and I've just, pocketed them, or bought them, of course, but then taken them home and haven't got round to watching them yet. Hope I've covered everything here, so I'll kick the ball off by starting with Malcolm. 1986, Nadia Tess and David Parker. I think that was their first collaboration. It's pretty much considered a classic Australian film. Colin Frills plays Malcolm. John Hargraves plays Frank. Malcolm is our hero. He worked for the tramways, lost his job. He was a bit of a simple man as far as I can see, although when I was a child, because of his creativity, I did not consider him a simple man at all. I consider him to be a genius. Anyway, Frank he loses his job. This is Malcolm. He loses his job at the tramways. Is sacked. Needs to get a boarder in to make ends meet. The boarder has a criminal, who is John Hargraves, has a criminal past and still a criminal. Corrupts Malcolm, and it's a comedy from then on in. Well, throughout it, it's a comedy. Good film. Bit of heart, even though, crime isn't good, for want of a better expression. They make this just a fun, light-hearted film. And Malcolm, good film. By the same people, Nadia Tess, David Parker, The Big Steal. I love this film. Probably one of my favourite Australian films. I was taken in from the very beginning when a V-Line train went past Danny Clark's place. Danny Clark is the main character, I guess you'd say. So it's got Steve Bisley in it, Ben Mendelsohn and Claudia Carver. They're the main players in the film. Ben Mendelsohn's character, who's Danny Clark, wants a Jaguar car to woo a girl. Well, he likes Jaguars anyway, but he thinks getting a hold of a Jaguar will woo this girl. He gets the Jaguar, is ripped off by the car dealer, Steve Bisley, and it's a funny comedy film. And I've said I've got spoilers, but I won't go into too much detail. He gets the car dealer back. It's the best way to describe it. Now, probably going into one of the most classic Australian films of all time, and this is one of those ones where stupid computers giving me messages. So this one here, classic Australian film, one of the ones where it's got film part overseas. That's part of the story. Probably guessed it, Crocodile Dundee. And if you look closely here, and it was pointed out to me by a fellow YouTuber, crocodile is in inverted commas, and that's on the American pressing. The Australian version doesn't have crocodile in inverted commas, as far as I know. I had to purchase the American pressing. This is the American pressing, as I probably just pointed out. I had to purchase this because back when I got this, good titles weren't on DVD, in Australia at least. This is a Region 1, and Region 4, nothing good came out on Region 4 when I first got a DVD player, I'll be blunt. So, the shelves at the DVD stores, or, anywhere you bought DVDs, had hundreds of these titles I'd never heard of, films that were never any good. Look, I won't diss them. They're probably all right. Some of them have got a cult following now, but they were films I really didn't like, or wasn't even interested in seeing. I wanted the good ones like this, Crocodile Dundee. So I had to get the American pressings. Of course, I had a multi-region DVD player. Crocodile Dundee, of course, is about a fish out of water story, or sort of. An American goes over to Australia, sees how this guy who lives at Rough lives, and he then goes over to America, and he's a fish out of water over there, she's a fish out of water over here, and turns into a love story. And they made a sequel. Again, I've got the American pressing here, Crocodile Dundee 2. This one's more like about the mob, or, actually South American drug cartel or drug lords, and full of violence, well, within reason. It's not a bloodbath or anything, but and so this is like a reverse of Crocodile Dundee 1, where Crocodile Dundee's living in America, and they come back to Australia to escape the drug lords. And of course, with Crocodile Dundee's skills and all that, he outwits the drug lords. This is a Region 1 pressing as well, with the crocodile, as pointed out by a fellow YouTuber, I didn't know this at the time, is in inverted commas. Crocodile Dundee in Los Angeles. Now, I love 2 and 3. I'll call this Crocodile Dundee 3, of course. It isn't really. This one I love just as much as the other two. I remember reading a movie review where someone said Paul Hogan should probably sheathe his knife. Of course, that's a reference to the first one, where this pimp or someone, I forget exactly what he pulls a flick knife on Crocodile Dundee. He's got a knife, says Linda Kostowski. Well, that's not a knife. That's a knife. And he brings out like a great big jungle knife. But anyway, this reviewer said Crocodile Dundee should probably sheathe his knife once and for all, and I didn't agree. I thought this was a good film. But of course, this time Crocodile Dundee is not in New York, he's in Los Angeles. Now we move on to the Australian rules films. This is probably the first one that I can remember being made up about Australian rules. Based on the David Williamson play, The Club. This is, I suppose, you're probably saying "da" here, which you've got every right to. This is a movie adaptation of the play. And so in this movie adaptation, they use the VFL club, as it was back then, Collingwood, the Collingwood Football Club, and they make references to just about every VFL team that was around back then, or players from the VFL teams. Had some great Australian rules football. I believe Tom Hafey's in it. Of course, he was before my time as far as playing's concerned, but had some great Australian rules football people involved in it. Stars John Howard, Graham Kennedy, Jack Thompson. So this is sort of what I consider the first Australian rules film. And it's about, backstabbing, infighting in a VFL football club. Fighting probably mainly centres around like a number 1 draft pick who certain members of the club believe the club is paying too much for, and it's not about loyalty anymore, it's about the almighty dollar rather than playing for the jumper. And probably sentiments that are echoed or lamented by Australian rules fans even to this day. Brilliant Australian film, great ochre accents and acting in it. It's something you'd probably, old school of course, but you'd probably consider that's the way Aussies were in the end of the 70s going into the 80s. It's just a great film. Love it. It's a really good one. Now we move on to another one, Australian rules film called Blinder. So this is like a second Australian rules film starring Jack Thompson. And so this is a lot darker. It's about about sexual misconduct around an Australian rules football club that wins a premiership, I think, from memory. I've only watched it once. It says Football Geelong on the Guernseys, jumpers, so it's supposed to be a league around my area somewhere from memory. And yes, look, second instalment, or a second Aussie Rules instalment starring Jack Thompson. Then we move on to another one, and this one is another Australian Rules football film called The Merger, and this is, I hope I said this, I probably didn't. John Howard is an actor who plays the #1 draft pick in the first film I said about Aussie Rules, The Club. And so this is like another Australian Rules football film, only this time a second one with John Howard in it. Sort of, there's little links between The Club, not as far as storylines or writers and that is concerned, as far as, but just sort of cool how they've got like they've got like actors from all those films are tied together. And yeah, this is another one. So it's quite a good film, actually. It sort of centres around a little kid who wants to make like amateur videos about the football club. Of course, the storyline is about a club that is on the verge of folding, merge or fold, or improve and become viable, which of course you probably guessed that, it's one of those happy-go-lucky stories where the football team recovers and survives. So, but yeah, look, it's it's got some deep backstories to it. And yeah, I believe it's filmed around Wagga, made by the people who made another Australian film called Backyard Ashes. That's about cricket. This one's about footy. The last film I'll do in this video is Australian Rules. It's just called Australian Rules. And this is one set in outback South Australia from memory, or country South Australia. It says here based on the award-winning novel Deadly Anna. I don't know what that means, but sort of probably focuses from memory on racism in sport, in sort of, like white people versus the Aboriginals, and well, it's still a very good it's a very good film. It's about tensions with people who hold old values, wrong they may be, versus people, versus the country growing up and becoming the way it probably should have been all along. Sort of, it's a good film, that one. I've only watched it once, maybe twice, but look, it is what it is, that one. And yeah, so look, that's my view on some Australian films. Feel free to drop a comment in the comment section. If you've seen these or haven't seen them, want to see them, whatever. If you've seen them and want to say they're a good film, bad film, whatever, feel free. Anyway, I'll leave it at that. You have a good time.